Let's go now to Emily Pagashnik for the weather news. Emily?
Thanks, Morgan. Here in the weather studio this week, we've been taking a look at some flooding in Oregon, mainly parts in Portland, due to some heavy rainfalls. Some areas could see up to about 7 inches of rain, and that rainfall included with washing away many sidewalks and streets. And there are reports of some landslides and damage to roadways caused by the flooding. And here we'll see a little kitty take matters into her own paws as she decides the best way to get across the rushing water is to swim across the water. The cat's owner safely recovered the would-be catfish and no doubt took her home to dry off. And in Portland, they've been receiving, or in areas around there, have been receiving about 1/4 of an inch of rainfall just about every day so far this month of December. And with that added rainfall, it continually makes the ground really saturated, and that can actually bring up the water table. Now, the water table is the boundary between the saturated soil and the unsaturated soil in the earth. And with the heavy rainfall, it actually brings that water table up, and that's where you can start to see some issues where water seeps into basements and could potentially ruin some foundations. Now, there are homes that are set up to pump that water away, keeping them nice and dry. And when we go into drought-like seasons, we can see that water table recede, which brings another issue as well. It could actually dry up some water wells that aren't nearly as deep as others. And with the first snowfall comes the first round of winter cleanup, and there are a few things you want to be aware of before you grab that shovel.
That first blanket of snow can be beautiful, but it can also be a pain. Terry Wynn, Associate Director for Safety at UND, says shoveling's not just an inconvenience. It can also lead to a number of injuries.
You'd also have the slipping, tripping, falling on the ground. You get obviously bruises, sprains, strains. You can hurt your knees, your hands.
Wynn says there's also risk to those with heart conditions or high blood pressure.
Once an individual gets into a cold atmosphere, the heart has a tendency to increase its workload, tries to pump blood faster.
Wynn also says that many people make the mistake of putting on too many layers of clothing when shoveling snow, and they forget about the exertion that's involved.
And in that situation, you want to have clothing that you can remove or at least allow to open to ventilate.
Even your choice of footwear can save you a trip to the emergency room.
People don't think they need boots, so they serve more than one purpose. They serve the purpose of stability. They serve the purpose of protection against the cold.
Whether it's wearing the proper clothing or being mindful of pre-existing medical conditions, having safety in mind may keep you and your family healthy for the holidays. This is Mike Rouser reporting for Studio One.
Another way to avoid injuries while shoveling snow is to actually stretch your muscles beforehand. And that brings us to our weather question of the week. Which tip is true for shoveling snow? Is it keep up with the storm, wear breathable layers, stay hydrated, or all of the above? Now, Morgan, there are people who do perish every year while they're shoveling snow, so it's very important to keep yourself safe.
All right, thanks, Emily. Now, Emily joins us in the studio with a final look at the weather. Emily?
Thanks, Morgan. For temperatures for the next week, the eastern coast is going to be pretty warm, with it being a little bit chillier on the western side of the United States. Precipitation for the next week, most of it's going to hang out around the South Dakota-Nebraska border, but otherwise most of the country might see a little bit of snow or even some rain in the next week. And that brings us back to our weather question of the week. Which tip is true for shoveling snow? And it's actually all of them. And shoveling snow is just like another form of exercise where your heart rate goes up and you can burn quite a bit of calories. And Morgan, I do have one more tip for you, and that is to push the snow, not lift it.
All right, thanks, Emily.